Okay, so let's just jump right in. Imagine for a second that you could get a peek inside the very nerve center of a country's national security. Well, that's pretty much what just happened in France, in a massive cyber attack that's setting off alarm bells everywhere.
And boom, there it is, straight from the horse's mouth. No beating around the bush. France's own interior minister confirmed it. An attacker got in. Now, this isn't just some technical glitch we're talking about. This is a confirmed security breach at one of the most sensitive parts of the entire French government.
So what was exactly the target? The French Interior Ministry. And you have to understand, this is not just another government building. It's the brain of the country's security, running everything from the national police force to immigration. For anyone trying to gather intelligence, hitting this place, well, it's like hitting the bullseye.
But this is where the story gets really interesting. The minister basically admitted they weren't sure who was behind it. Was it another country? Maybe some activists trying to make a statement? Or was it just cyber criminals looking for a payday? Right from the get-go, this was a total mystery. The huge question on everyone's mind was, who did this, and what were they after?
Now, while this specific attack is still being pieced together, you gotta understand, the French authorities are not starting from square one, not even close. They've actually been tracking a much bigger cyber espionage campaign for years, and they have a pretty good idea who their prime suspect is.
And that prime suspect has a name, APT-28. You might also know them as Fancy Bear. Now that APT part stands for Advanced Persistent Threat, and believe me, they have earned that name. They're advanced in their skills, and they're persistent because once they're in your system, they are incredibly hard to get out. And Western intelligence agencies are pretty much all in agreement that this group is a unit of Russia's military intelligence, the GRU.
And this part right here is absolutely crucial to the whole story. France has already publicly pointed the finger at APT-28 for a wider campaign that's been hitting dozens of French targets since 2021. So, even though they haven't officially named them for this specific ministry breach, you can see why all eyes are turning in their direction.
So why all the focus on this one group? Well, to get that, you really have to look at their track record. This isn't their first rodeo. In fact, their history reads like a greatest hits album of some of the most disruptive cyber attacks we've seen in the last decade. I mean, just look at this timeline. 2015, they hit the German parliament. 2016, they were behind the DNC hacks during the US election. By 2020, the European Union was hitting them with sanctions for these attacks. You see the pattern here, right? This isn't random. It's a consistent strategic targeting of the very heart of Western democracies.
So how do they do it? What's their playbook? Well, the U.S. Department of Justice actually broke it all down after the 2016 election. It usually starts with something called spear phishing, which is basically sending super targeted, clever emails to trick people into giving up their passwords. Once they're in, they steal everything they can find. But here's the really slick part. They created a fake hacker persona, Guccifer 2.0, to leak the documents, making it all look like some lone wolf hacktivist, not a state-sponsored operation. Pretty clever, huh?
Okay, so we've seen their history. We know their methods. But how does all of that connect to what's going on in France right now? Are we just watching the same group run the same playbook all over again? Let's try to connect the dots.
A report from France's own cybersecurity agency, ANSSI, gives us a really clear picture. Their focus has been incredibly broad and strategic. They're not just hitting one place. They're going after the government, the defense sector, research centers, even the financial industry. And the goal? According to the French, it's the theft of strategic intelligence. This is classic, old-school espionage, just with new-school tools.
And when you put the two campaigns side by side, the one in the US back in 2016 and the more recent one in France, the similarities are just striking. Yeah, the tactics get a little more sophisticated, they use different web services to hide their tracks, but the core strategy? It's exactly the same. Target key political and defense organizations and steal their secrets. It's the same game, just being played on a different field.
But it's really important to zoom out here, because this goes way beyond a single hack in France. What's happening there is really just one symptom of a much larger global trend, one that has the entire Western alliance on high alert.
And this is where things get really, really serious. We're not just talking about France's opinion anymore. NATO itself has weighed in. They're calling these attacks part of an intensifying campaign that represents a direct threat to Allied security. When a military alliance like NATO uses language that strong, you know this is a massive deal.
NATO calls all of this stuff hybrid activities. It's a term for this new kind of conflict that sort of blurs the lines between wartime and peacetime.
It's everything from cyber attacks and spreading disinformation all the way to sabotage and even acts of violence. It's all about weakening your opponent without ever having to fire a traditional shot.
And for France, this is the real takeaway. At the end of the day, this isn't just about some stolen computer files. As they put it, these kinds of activities are simply unacceptable. It's a direct challenge to international rules and a violation of trust at the absolute highest level of global diplomacy.
All of this really leaves us with a fundamental question, doesn't it? Espionage used to be something you'd see in the movies, spies in trench coats exchanging briefcases. But now, it's silent attacks on our servers and our inboxes. The entire battlefield has been redrawn. The new front line isn't a border on a map, it's the security of our data.